in the exhibition we have 10 years of our collaborative work, but
approximately 10 years.
we wanted to take you back a little further, so that not to be repetitive, but to give you a little bit more insight on our evolution. We decided to do our lecture tonight on 20 years of our collaboration. So we're going to start from the very beginning. Now,
this is when we just met.
this is in 1989. Now, it was not only for us significant, but it was a significant time in Russia and the rest of the world. It was an historical time to be in the Soviet Union under glasnost, which means, as many of you know, opening up and perestroika, rebuilding, when Russia was undergoing huge transformation and the formation of a new democracy. It was these political events that allowed us to actually meet, and it also allowed me to study in Russia for the first time. How it started in 1989, there was a national competition in the United States to have a visual artist represent this country in the Soviet Union. And I went for it without hesitation because I really felt that I needed more figurative skills. I had gone through 6 years of education, higher education. I still felt that I still lacked what I needed. I went to Brooklyn College, and when this competition came about, I had seen an exhibition in New York, actually at the New York Academy, of Soviet artists from the Academy. And because of glasnost, it was made possible in New York to see this exhibition for the first time. And when I saw their skill, I was so blown away that I said, you know, this is like, like a light bulb lit up. This is where I have to go. So I applied, even though the odds were definitely against me. I didn't think I'd get it, but I still knew I had to do it. So after applying, I actually won the award and stayed from 2 years, from 89 to 91. And this agreement was signed by Gorbachev and Reagan, and it was supported by both governments to create mutual understanding in the arts.
And this is the actual building of the academy, and it started with Ekaterine the Great, and it's have very, very long story. So that is the building. But let's go further to...
No, let's say also that that's one of 2 institutions in Russia that started under Peter the Great, one in St. Petersburg and the others in Moscow. And it's a really extremely high competition to get into either one of the academies. So if you want to go from there, this is how old Pasha was. When I refer to him as Pasha because Pavel, it's very difficult to pronounce. I can say it, but most people can't. So if you don't mind, from now on, I'm going to call him Pasha.
Yeah, I have a collection of mispronounced names. So, so this is me when I was, at this point, I'm already 12 after 1 year being in Lyceum. And it's how young you start to study, professionally study art. You start very, very young, and prior to that you also have to have training to be accepted to that school. So that is...
So at the age of 11, basically, 11 or 12, children are admitted into the Lyceum, and they're accepted into one or two of either the Moscow Art Lyceum or the St. Petersburg Art Lyceum. And Pasha at that point was separated, had to leave his family, and from the rest of his life he lived without family. Now, I don't know about you guys, but my son's only 8, and it's hard for me to imagine that in just 3 short years he would be leaving forever to study art or ballet or whatever it may be. That's the education in the Soviet Union, and Pasha was ready to do it. He wanted it.
I wanted, and my mother asked me, we were living in different city in Ural Mountains, and when she asked me if I wanted to do that, without any question, I said, yes, I wanted to do that. So that was the drive from very, very beginning. And at the age 11, I was living in dormitory by myself, so that is, it was very tough for both of us, for my mother and for me, being such a long distance from each other.
And at that time, and still is today, 50 students are chosen each year.
Total. In a year, from
out
entire,
of the entire
country
and
republics.
At that time, the republics that
and
were
also
Soviet.
affiliated countries, like communist bloc countries. So that would be competition too. And
this was an etching that he did around that age. From the very start, you have to work from life. I think this was done, I don't know, around 12. And he worked directly on an etching plate, drawing with a metal stylus onto metal, and then etched it later. And that was one of the, that is the way you get started in the Russian art education so that you can get into the Lyceum.
So after completing Lyceum, after that I was accepted to Russian Academy Surikov Institute, and unfortunately, after 1 year in being in academy, I was.
He was forced to do
I was forced to be
military
in the army.
service in the army, and that's the way it is in Russia. Everybody has to serve for 2 years. So at the age of, let's see, how old were you?
18. I was about 18.
About 18, he was in an area not far from Chernobyl, and Chernobyl actually took place 1 year after he got into the army, so it was around the same time. He was officially commander of tanks, but that wasn't really a good position for him. And luckily, he had a lot of experience, and they noticed his talent early on that he could paint. So the generals actually transferred him to the Department of Unofficial Soviet Propaganda poster painting for the city of Pechi, where he did for 2 years these large-scale murals that would cover the entire city. Unfortunately, most of his friends died in Afghanistan, so we feel very fortunate today that he actually was able to use his art talents in this way. It not only allowed him to help the government, but it saved his life, potentially.
I was pretty lucky because of whatever I had.
Now this
Well-
is, when we first met, this is the entrance hall
This
to
is
the
Suzanne.
Surikov Academy of Art. And that's not Pasha, that's my brother. He came to visit too, because my whole family was just so amazed that I was in Russia. They weren't, at first, not too pleased about it. They were a little fearful. But then they took it as an opportunity to go and visit for themselves. And they were really happy they did. So this is the winged Nike. And in the Surikov Academy, it's much like being in a museum. It's unbelievable. It's so inspirational because you have all of these copies of ancient statues.
One of the first copies made from originals, so it's very, very valuable pieces
It's a museum
by
piece.
themselves.
And all the stained windows were done by students, former students, like at the turn of the century, the stained glass windows. So definitely it was wonderful to be there and copy great art every day. Now the Surikov was founded and named after famous Russian history painter, probably the greatest Russian history painter ever, Surikov. Surikov and Rapin formed the group of painters known as the Wanderers.
This is one of his paintings.
Can you tell them the title?
It's
The Morning of the Execution by Tsar Peter I. So this is Red Square, of course, and it was the concept that the Wanderers wanted to depart from the official academy.
which was similar to this, based on a French-Italian academy, and it was very stiff.
Well, they wanted to go away from the Greek and Roman themes and focus more on a Russian national school of painting, very similar to what we had in this country with the Hudson River School. So there are a lot of parallels between American and Russian painting, and this is one of them. At this time, we both wanted to break away from the influence of Europe, to take the foundation, but to move into our own national schools.
And then in Soviet time, which will be next slide, it's changed a little bit in terms of themes. Of course, it was historical themes the most prized, but in the same time, you would see a painting like this, like for example, this one called the Wedding on the Future Street. So it's very uplifting, very happy paintings, glorifying happy life of Soviet in the Soviet regime. And,
Soviet workers, factory workers, collective farm workers, and that was the official social realist style. Of course, we skip the whole Russian avant-garde, but we're not art historians. We're trying to show you our experience. And the experience of the Academy when I was there, up until the time I was there from 1932 to 1991, was socialist realism. And that's different than American social realism. Socialist realism had a utopian agenda rather than just showing social themes. It was not in reflecting social conditions. It had a utopian socialist agenda. Now, this is one of the most famous Mukhina, and that still stands today. Mukhina was one of the greatest socialist realist sculptors and artists, and it goes to show you how early on the women had equal status in the workforce, because women were in the workforce right after the revolution, 1917 revolution in Russia.
the women and men had equal rights and everything since that time.
Okay, so going back to when I first got into the Surikov, they at first didn't want to let me in, which was such a huge, for me, it was a disappointment to me because I couldn't understand how could it be that the official Russian academy had accepted me, but yet the professors in the institute didn't want to teach me. And it was almost to the point where the exchange was about to be canceled. And then it occurred to me, wait a second, have they even seen my work? They had seen my work. It's a high echelon of hierarchy of power and bureaucrats, and the higher bureaucrats had seen my work and approved it, but the professors in the institute had not seen it. So I brought my work to the school. I said, look, this is what I'm doing. This is what I want to do. And so all of a sudden, everything changed. All the doors opened. They said, oh, look, an American who's painting realism, an American who can paint the figure. And then everything changed. So from then on, everything was pretty smooth, except, and this is one of the early paintings I did, except that they wouldn't allow me to take Leninist, their only course in art theory was Leninist Marxist aesthetics, and they wouldn't let me in the class. And I said, I really want to take this class, and they said, no, you can't take it. And
because you're American.
Yes, they only allowed people from Cuba, Syria, and other political alliances to take this class. So that was sort of a disappointment to me.
So this one is a typical classroom in academy for this one for artist anatomy, and it's as you see on the walls some drawings. They are done in the first or second year of the program.
So it's like undergraduate, equivalent to our first and second year of undergraduate school. And these are écorchés. You draw from plaster cast of flayed muscles. And that's how it's central to the Academy's education, regardless of what department you're in. And there's 5 different faculty, there are 5 different departments in the Academy, and every single one, whether it's architecture or art theory, you have to take drawing from anatomy.
So,
and they dissect and they do all of the things that Leonardo did. It's very classical.
This is the typical hallway in academy also. So it's completely filled with artwork and.
Wait, can I just go back one? This is first and second year easel painting, and that was the faculty that I was in, and he was in the graphic department.
So this is the typical hallway. It's a lot of artwork all over the place, and it's this one, for example, this is the
monumental painting
monumental
and
paintings and fresco. So they would use that wall every year. They would paint one thing. One student will or graduate will paint that wall. The next year it will be completely taken away and painted another one. So it's constantly changing.
This is actually a 5th year. It would be the first year of graduate school, equivalent here. This is a cartoon. It's a drawing or a study. It's pretty big. You can see the size from the figures there. It's a study or a cartoon that is approved in the 5th year, so that in the 6th year, the last year of graduate school, you get a art studio for the first time, your own studio, and you develop an idea. So this was an approved idea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now this is one of the This is one of the etchings that Pasha did in the institute when I met him. Okay. This is one of the etchings that he did that was acceptable, and the Soviets liked this piece, so it wasn't a problem. But I'll show you some later on that did become a problem. This is my first drawing in the institute, just a drawing from life. One thing I like about studying in Russia was the ability to slow down and really take your time. You could spend as much time as you needed to finish a work, and if it took you the whole semester, that's fine. Just do a good job at it. Now, I did spend the whole semester on this, but that part I enjoyed, because coming from this system, where every semester we had maybe, 6, 10 assignments for each class, add that up by 4 or 5 classes, that comes to a lot of work. And this way you could really focus your energies on one thing, which for a figurative artist who wants to do representational work, that's really useful. This started to get us in trouble. Not us, sorry, him. I forget sometimes that we're separate now. That we were separate then. This became a real problem because, you want to explain?
What it was, after so many years of completing my training, I was a little bit into experimental mode, and I started to explore different ways. And in this particular assignment, it's intaglio class, and my professor, he said that we need to do a copy, and it's been assumed that it will be copied from old masters such as Rembrandt and Dürer and so on. So instead of that, I decided, you know what, I wanted to make something insignificant, like a fly, and make a copy of that fly so many times. So that was my answer for copying, and I was copying first of all myself, which is
No.
At the time. Also, I want to say that being a student in academy, you're not an artist, you're just a student. And maybe after you finish the entire program, then you have to prove yourself that you're an artist. So that is the difference between training here and there. And that was this particular answer to that assignment was a little slap in the face to my professors. And for that, I was banned from printmaking for a month, and then I wiggled myself in.
Well, that's right when we met. I'd heard about him. There were rumors in the school, and I was curious. Even though I was there because I wanted to be, I'd made a conscious choice that I wanted rules. And actually, after going through postmodernist theory in the 1980s, I felt like I needed structure, and I really felt that rules would set me free. Later on, that changed, but that's what I felt at the time. So. I wanted to find out who this guy was, because there was something going on there, and it turned out we actually had a lot in common.
I had hunger for different experimentation at the time, so it was good meeting. So she had knowledge of what I want, and I had knowledge of what she wants, so it was very good marriage of exchanging of our knowledge.
So at that time, I just want to give you a little feeling of the time of what was going on in 1989 to 91. The Soviets in the academy, there weren't that many like Pasha, but there were a few. And they were basically doing what they wanted at home. They wouldn't dare show their professors because they were afraid that they might be kicked out like Pasha was. But he had he wanted to show them and get their reaction. I respected that. But it was a hard time to be in Russia, but yet, even though everybody had a lot of freedom, life was difficult. This is an example of poster design, because that was one of his subjects that he studied, was the art of propaganda and poster design. This is Mik Moskva. If you don't read Russian, that's what it says. Mik Moskva, which means Mik Moscow.
It's not my poster, it's just a sample of other student work.
But we wanted to show it to you because it was a student friend of his, and we'll show you some later. But this was, in 1990, the first McDonald's opened up in Moscow. And this is the line to get in, and it keeps going, down to the left, it keeps going. And I stood in that line. And I can't believe it to this day, because I don't eat McDonald's here. But when I was there, I was really hungry. And even though I had some care packages sent from home, it was a really hard time in Russia. And although it was great, everybody was talking about Gorbachev as being the greatest, and he was, because he did do a lot of instrumental changes. At the same time, however, it was a hard, long road and a lot of suffering in this transition. This was a line for meat.
For meat or bread, whatever line. It was all over the place. Lines. And
for every basic necessity, and it was a great deal of frustration from the Russian people. When I would stand in line, and I had a ruble stipend on my exchange program. So even though I was a lot, like 4 times more than the average Russian art student, it still wasn't enough to pay for basic essentials. So I would stand in line for eggs, and then after 2.5 hours of waiting, sometimes in the snow, for eggs, they would run out.
Oh, she came home and she was almost crying. I want some eggs.
So this is one of the posters that Pasha created in his class when I knew him. If you want to explain it.
Sure. Probably you know a little bit of history, how in 1930s, after revolution in Stalin time, everything what was like religious or different cultural values than communist values was completely destroyed. So this way I put everything in a garbage can what was destroyed at
All
the
the art of the
time.
avant-garde, like the modernist and such.
And then in 90s it was also borderline between what would happen next. Nobody could predict what will happen. No, it was absolute unknown. It was just wonder what will happen. So that was my answer for the poster. That was just student work.
So that's me and Lenin. Lenin was everywhere in Russia at the time. I mean, every single public building had a bust or a painting of Lenin. You couldn't go anywhere in the subway or a public place or a store without some kind of image of Lenin. And that quickly changed after 91. But the whole time I was there, he was everywhere.
So that kind of designs and size of designs I did when I was serving in the army. So that was.
Now this is the first piece that we did together. We're not going to show you the work that we did in the Surikov because many of it was taken as a part of their permanent collection. Oftentimes he didn't want to do his homework, so I would do it for him, and he would sign it, and it's now in the Surikov. But that's okay because we sign everything jointly now anyway, so what's it matter? This is one of the first paintings we did called Conversation, and we were just starting to communicate, and we didn't know each other's language very well, except for my rudimentary Russian. And we put the gold letters in the piece in both Russian, you can see Russian fonts and English fonts, to show the difficulties in the language barrier that we had. And also at the time there was an influence of Gilbert and George. We had seen an exhibition of Gilbert and George, so there's some of that there too. And also having the separation of parts was a very logical way for us to split up the responsibilities as to who does what.
And actually, how we started, we start to draw on like on napkins and with food, with everything, whatever we can express ourselves. So it's how we start, and the language was definitely the big problem because I couldn't even speak any single word in English. So that was.
So we would sit for hours in front of a dictionary, and that took too long. So we decided that art was an easier way for us to get across our point. And it certainly wasn't a planned thing to work together. It just happened. Early on, when we were in the institute, some of the professors saw what we were doing, and they were instrumental, some of them, in getting us a show at the Central House of Artists Liturgical Gallery, and that's us standing there in front. And this is the main exhibition place for national Russian art and contemporary art. In 89 to 91, there were many exhibitions going on. While we were on the first floor, Rosenquist was on the second. Rauschenberg had just had a solo exhibition for the first time, Gilbert and George. So there was like this big, one series of blockbuster shows after another, and Soviets were exposed for the very first time in their life to the art of Western contemporary art. So it was a really huge thing for Russian artists. And afterwards, you would see all of a sudden everywhere in the Institute paintings that were like copies of Warhol and pop art and Coca-Cola cans and things. So it really had a big impact on people. And there's the painting inside our first exhibition together. And we were still just at the end of our education as grad students. And this is also one of our first second painting we did, and we had just both, it's kind of personal, all of our work deals with personal issues and our joint experiences together. We had just experienced it for the first time, the death of a grandparent, and the piece is like a funerary piece. It sort of symbolizes our joint exploration of our experience and also the diversity of the culture differences. So it's oil on canvas, and self-portraits, of course, and there's a window on the top. You can see that duality of yin and yang, light and dark, the window, and then the coffin, like the coffin door on the bottom. And these are some of the influences that we had at the time, the things that we looked at. Can you explain, Pasha?
Yes, actually it's a baptism. Go to the next one. This is how most people baptize in Russia. So it's just cut in the ice shape of the cross, and people just jump into the water, and priest would baptize them.
Yeah, and I thought that was an art piece, but when he told me that's the real thing, I couldn't believe it. And this was an etching done about the same time. And my background is Catholic, so I have the funerary prayer on the top in Catholic faith, and on the bottom the Russian Orthodox, which is even stricter than Catholicism.
So we always try to find similarities between our cultures. So we're not looking into differences. We're trying to find similarities, and how the same event, how it will be taken in two different cultures. And that was the interest of us for a long, long time.
This is the same exhibition, and this is about surveillance. There was a lot of surveillance, of course, when we were in Russia. Not only was my phone tapped, but there were these milliman boxes, they call them, milliman.
So it's on the street, those little booth or kiosk or whatever they call it.
Made out of aluminum.
And it's pretty much on every corner of the street, and you're constantly being watched by someone. That is still strange feeling, but it's how it is. So our remark was how to build, how to construct the milliman, how to make like a factory. So you can assemble the milliman or policeman, or disassemble the policeman. So it's
or the metro worker. In this case, the metro worker. So they were pretty much almost life-size oil paintings at the time. We were mostly oil painters.
So this is the same concept. And then we moved to New York, and we start to paint this type of work, which is pretty much continuous to what we did prior to that. This piece actually, for first time, we combine video and painting together. So as you see, it's also a sculpture. So in the place of eyes, we put the video monitor, which is match exactly the color of the painting. So it's when you're walking nearby, all of a sudden something moves. It's a little spooky, but it's how we wanted it.
So once again, we're showing about our commonalities and also our differences in gender and identity. The next thing that happened, though, when we were in New York, we just came there for a visit because I wanted to show Pasha America for the first time. He had never left his country. He was never allowed to. It took him 3 months of official stamps and paperwork, and they had to ask people that he knew 20 years ago, this teacher and that teacher, if he should go, and his neighbors, is he a good person? Should he be able to go to America? So they were testing his character, and he had to have all these stamps. It just took forever. And then after he got all the stamps on the Soviet side, I thought it was all over. Oh, finally, where he's going to go. No, then he had to stand in line at the American embassy in Moscow in the snow for 3 months. Every day he had to show up, and finally he got his papers and came to America. So when we did these paintings, we were just there as basically tourists, thinking that we would go back to Moscow together, because Pasha had an apartment there, and I was perfectly fine with going back. But then we saw in the news the Soviet coup, and all of a sudden we became really worried that if we went back to Russia, that he would be stuck. And we called his mom. We said, "What's going on, Valentina? There's tanks on Red Square, all around the center of the city." And she said, "Oh, I have no idea. I know nothing about this." So, we realized that these things may not even be getting through to the press. So it looked like there could be some sort of hard-line return to the old ways, and maybe the propaganda,
the old way, the old regime is
going to take back from
back
everything that Gorbachev had accomplished. So we were afraid, and at that time we decided we should renew make our commitment more strong, and we got married at City Hall on lunch at that very moment. And from then on, we lived in the United States and still do, and go back from time to time.
So this piece, when I realized that my culture, because I left my country, I started questioning everything, what was going on in terms of culture and in terms of social economics and other things. So I said to myself, okay, so my culture is pretty much dead. So I'm pretty much dead as a previous person. So what I did, we started to do a series of performances on my birthday.
Which is right next to April Fool's, one day before.
So it's basically I'm doing my own funeral.
And he put an obituary in the New Russian Daily, and in the style of Peter Greenaway, the cook, the thief, his wife, and
This
the
one,
lover,
this
we did
particular
this installation in the Russian cafe in the Lower East Side of New York. And we were very active in the Russian community at that time, and there was a lot of performance art going on, and we became a part of it. Even though we were still creating objects, because that's what we're good at, we also did these performances as sort of healing. And this is the next one that we did, out of the fire and into the frying pan. And it was off of the Hudson River in New York. We rented a boat, and we put Pasha's corpse out to sea. And all of us had little kids, bow and arrows with fire.
It was
and we shot them into the boats based on the...
Yeah, it was based on a Viking funeral of 9th century, based in Russia. So it's definitely we would take the historic precedent and replay or replicate that.
Okay, so about that time, we were still making objects and exhibiting a lot in different circles in different museums. And this particular piece continues what we were doing before, and it's called Self-Portrait with Mask.
And it's remarking on what we're thinking about Gorbachev in a way. It's kind of like a sarcastic piece, but it's a very subtle sarcasm.
But that was a time when Yeltsin was about to take over, so it was that transitional time between Gorbachev and Yeltsin. Then in about 1993, Komora Melamed had a proposal on what to do with the Soviet monuments after the coup. They started to do a series of meetings in their Soho studio, which we went to, and we actually proposed to do something with them, and this is called the Project of the Monuments of the Hero's Funeral. And our idea was to do it the same way that Stalin was buried, the official funeral, and have all of the Soviet monuments go through this ritualized funeral like Stalin and all the official leaders do, and then have them buried around the Moscow Kremlin on Red Square. And it was featured in the New Yorker, and this is the other people who had projects, Komora Melamed, Art Spiegelman, and ours on the right there. And all of the pieces were shown in these boxes, display boxes with Stalin's head underneath, and it traveled for a period of 5 years around to different museums around the world, and this is in the World Financial Center.
So actually it's this is the Tsar's head from Tsar's sculpture, so obviously history repeats, so it's exactly the same Soviets did to previous leaders, and then the new regime did for communists.
So we went away from that sort of political work and realized that wasn't really what we wanted to do with our work. We wanted to go in a more personal,
more
inward direction, more mystical. So we started to deal again with healing, and this piece deals with shamanism. So you've got the bones. There's a poem. We oftentimes put poetry in our work, and this is a poem by 20th century symbolist Khlebnikov. And all the little deer bones that hang from it have little figures in it. You can't really see. But he would walk around with this gallery coat, and the bones formed a mystical tree. And this is what the tradition is based on. It's a shaman in Siberia. And Pasha, by the way, is from the Ural Mountains, which geographically is not very far from Siberia. So there's some of the same traditions in the Ural Mountains as in Siberia and the Altai Mountains. And this is a Siberian shaman with the tree, that mystical tree, like our bone pieces, tree rib cage is sewn into his costume, which is extremely sacred. That started a series of bone pieces. And oftentimes, going to Florida, we would find roadkill of different things, different bones. This one is called Massa Confusa, which is the first stage of the alchemy process. And we found that tortoise shell in Florida, and then we buried it. And when we reconstructed it, we lost a lot of the pieces. Which is
so once again, we're coming back to the shamanic approach. So the process is very important for us too. It's not the final object, but how you make the object. So in this case, it's completely disassemble the object and then you put it together. So it's act of being like almost shamanic act.
We were very influenced by, we love the work of Joseph Cornell and this sort of idea of a box construction. So you see the found object, And then in the center is the little egg tempera painting. So we started to do these little egg tempera paintings in the center. And gradually we got to get more and more into the egg tempera process, which you can see in the exhibition here at the museum. Now this is the other side of the tortoise shell. And on the glass is etched the tree of the Sephiroth, which comes from the Kabbalah and ancient Jewish mysticism. There's the Kabbalah. This is a tree temple, Angkor Wat, many of you may be familiar with. The banyan tree is a image or a symbol that we put in many of our works. Here's another tree temple in India that influenced us, and a detail of that. And that led to this box construction called Regeneration from the Center. This is a tree of alchemy scheme from the 16th century. So now I'm just kind of showing you the influences that led to the next piece. This is the tree of alchemy, another box construction. And in the center, there's a flayed taxidermized gecko, and the little chalice in the center is sort of like the cup of the Holy Grail. And on the rocks, on each one, you can see that there's a symbol done with gold leaf, and that each one is the symbol of the 12 stages of the alchemy process. This is the last one from that series, and this is a cave, which is symbolic of the womb. It's a theme that you'll see a lot in our work in the exhibition. And this started a new series called Dream Icons. About this time, we started to ask our friends and family to share their dreams. And we would do a painting of the person and then their dream around the outside.
It's in a way similar to medieval manuscripts when they have very precise painting in the center and then go absolutely wild on the margins. So that was the idea of dreamer inside of the dream.
Now this is banyan tree, of course, and the dreamer in the center, his dream is actually done with gold text painted up, leading up as a sort of pyramid to him. That was the very first time that we started to use this tradition of Russian icon painting. And at that time, we both took Russian icon painting classes together. And I'll tell you a little bit about the process, because that's how we work from that series up to now. We work in the same process, and that is working with poplar. You see the recessed area is called in Russian kovcheg, which means Noah's Ark. And it means basically it's a symbol of the vessel, that it's going to receive light. In the back you can see the braces. Also the poplar represents the tree of life, which is a common symbol in our work.
So we start to take some symbolism from icon writing, and it's again the board, how it was carved, and also the colors and the process. We start to do the same steps in our work, how it would be developed in icon writing. Of course, it won't be liturgical, it will be our way, our interpretation, our imagery. And but we were based and still basing a lot of steps on how the icon writing would be done.
We'll show that towards the end of the lecture. We have
Yes.
that more in detail.
And also very important for us, the idea of persona. When it started in till 17th, 18th century in Russia, only art only painting form was just icons. It's never been anything else like painting of the portrait of the person, like regular person.
So secular people weren't portrayed until the late 17th, early 18th century. And persona also means persona, which is Latin. And it's basically started at that time. For 600 years, only icon painting was in Russia. And in some ways, we see our works as being kind of contemporary persona, because it's sort of elevating the secular people that we know. This is another one of our influences, Van der Weyden. Naturally, van der Weyden's technique is influential to us because tempera painting originated in Europe with this sort of painting, with the Flemish and earliest painting. Actually, the earliest form of egg tempera painting dates back to ancient Egypt, but it was really used widely in the early Renaissance. And our work is a combination of Eastern and Western methods. So first I showed you the Eastern methods and now the Western methods. So we try to incorporate both of these influences in our work. Now this is from the Dream Icon series, once again, and this is called Labyrinth. And the text of the dream winds around to the center along the labyrinth. This is the Madonna of the Dry Tree. And this painting led to this painting that we did. The influence of Petrus Christus led to this work, Alexandra's Dream. As you could see that there's the same A's which represent Alexandra. Her dream is in text around her, and it also represents, as in Petrus Christus, Ave, Ave Maria. Jane's dream, she had a dream about being in the mountains of Nepal, and she gave us this little rock to sort of prove that her dream took place, because after she had the dream, she actually went to Nepal and got this rock.
That particular rock which was in her dream.
And we put it in there as sort of a relic, to prove that the dream and the real experience took place.
So in the same time as we were still working on Dream Icons, we did also this particular installation, and that work on each object, every single rock and leaf is written "Thank you" in English and Thracian, and that was devoted to my mother. She wrote the letter before she died, half a year before she died. She sent me a letter, and basically it was just a poem thanking everything. So we contacted the first museum she took me to, and proposed that idea, and they liked the idea, and that happened in that museum.
So we went all over the cities where she lived, and we wrote on the streets her poem from the small village. Can you do the pointer?
Yeah, like where she could have been physically and walked. Like this
That's
is
where she was
this is
born.
the text written, and pretty much it's like middle of nowhere. That village is so small. It's like little tiny speck.
Yeah, but it's all Ouporovs that live there.
Yeah, and then this is the capital city of Urals, and it's where she lived most of her life. And we started to write the same poem just on the pavement of the streets and around the city. And then in Moscow on Red Square, I really tried to write on the Red Square, but guards just dragged me away. And so instead, because it's peaceful action, of course, so I just hold the letter and just document that. So that is that.
These are the etchings that we also exhibited etchings in the museum, and they were etchings all based upon her life. So we do work in a variety of media. We're also printmakers. And sometimes a print will inspire a painting, or a painting vice versa, or a painting will inspire a video. But everything is sort of interrelated thematically and explored in different media. So this is an etching that we did right after that time, and that led to this painting, actually. We etched the etching itself into brass and then inserted a tempera panel behind it.
This is cut out, the brass cut out, and then painting inserted behind it. And this element engraved on the metal. So that is coming from the tradition of
Russian aklad.
Russian aklad, which is also called triza, and basically it's covering of the...
Riza means robe.
Robe. It's not only protective covering, it's also in a way saying thank you to the icon and embellish the icon. So what is interesting about this, the entire image of the painting is painted behind that covering. So that is later added on, and we like that idea. We start to play on that.
Now this is aklad for the most famous Russian icon painter or icon writer, Rublev. And this is the aklad, and that's the painting.
So all that beauty would be covered with another beauty. So that is layering. It was a very interesting and playful idea for us. We start to explore that.
And this is typical, this is actually Moscow Kremlin and the iconostas, which has always influenced us aesthetically. It's unbelievable transformative experience going into a Russian church. The architecture is just phenomenal, and the incense and just the whole experience of chanting. People cannot sit down out of respect for God. You cannot sit down. So the service can go on for 3 hours or more. And you see people who, who can hardly even stand, with osteoporosis, and they're hunched over and they're singing for 3 hours in the church. And it's just that kind of devotion is unbelievable. And although our work is not liturgical, it really does, the aesthetic of it inspires us. So this is the iconostas, which separates the altar, where actually people are not allowed, women are not allowed past this point, only the priest, and from the rest of the congregation. And that's an icon door, which is quite sacred, another icon door. And that led to this piece we did called Tree Gate. You can see the similar abstraction, and also the use of metal with egg temper panels inserted. Another Aclad piece.
And also, it's another influence. It's Western piece, and it's just carved wood and gold leaf and painted. It's quite remarkable piece. And when we saw that, we wanted to do something similar to that. So our answer to that was this piece. So it's carved wood, polychromy, technique of polychromy, and painting.
And it's called Robe Series Suzanne, so it sort of makes reference to the word Riza in Russian, which is also Aclad. Now, the painting in the center is all tempera, and then everything around it is gilded.
So then we start to be interested in different ideas. So we start to explore the celestial alphabet, because with the interest of first words of our sun, we start to explore where's the origins of the sounds of the written letters or alphabets, and we found so-called angelic or celestial alphabet, and it's
from the 17th century.
This particular scheme is 17th century rendering of that particular alphabet, and it's never been spoken word. Never been spoken language, and it's quite interesting. So that is the actual letters.
And each letter corresponds to a constellation.
So this is the etching based on that scheme, and then we moved a little bit further and start to create object. This is the etched glass, and the painting behind it. So we wanted that shadows and etched glass, when you moving around, they will interact. So it's have interactive quality into that piece.
Like a shifting constellation, basically. So the painting in the background is a temper panel, and then the glass in front.
And then we start to coming back to egg tempera, smaller pieces, and we start to create work similar to that. And this is one of them. It's also, again, we start to use the symbol of tree, banyan tree. And banyan tree, what is remarkable about, it's pretty much like Ouroboros. It's the roots becoming trunks, trunks becoming roots. So it's constantly circle. And in many cultures, such as in Nepal or India, they built temples inside of those trees. So we start to plan that idea, and also it's remind us of in a way of feeling or either cathedral when you're looking up, or the womb when you're looking straight. So we were playing on that idea.
So we look a lot at folklore and mythology from all over the world and try to find commonalities, and this is a Scandinavian world tree. You can see that the cosmos and the sky is on the top where the branches are and the roots, and they sort of echo one another and create one form. And that led to a series of banyan tree pieces based on that configuration. This is called Twilight, and again, a painting of our sun with the cosmos in the tree branches. And it's all egg tempera. The entire painting's egg tempera. It's about 24 by 30. It's in the show. So now we're getting to the work in the
This is
exhibition.
detail of it, yeah.
Jacob's ladder.
And what is interesting about this piece, we always used photography as a reference, and we did photographs for almost every piece we did. And then when we paint that work, when we did that work, we realized it's the photograph itself could be stand on its own. So we start to thinking to exhibit just the photograph itself.
Yeah, from a practical side too, our son had just been born and we needed to produce some works, and egg temper painting is extremely tedious. So we were having an exhibition on photography based on those themes.
So for each of this work, we did a photograph using 4x5 camera with a large negative, and it's.
This is the preceding painting. This is the photograph that inspired it. And this is called Hands of My Mother. And there's actually a poem by Susan Griffin on the bottom. Let's see.
So on the roots, we start to wrote a poem by Susan Griffin, and it's quite amazing. We contact her and ask permission if we can use it, and she said yes, of course, but don't tell to my publisher, and don't write a poem entirely. Just cut it off somewhere.
I won't read the whole poem to you, but it's something about I am made from this earth and so on. It kind of expresses the womb idea and the feeling of mother and earth.
And in the same time, also we're practicing the study of the figures which we would paint or planning to paint. So we do the studies, and in this case, it's silver point made on mylar and a gold leaf behind it. And the size is 4x5 inches, so they are fairly small.
So for some of this may be repetitive, for you've heard our other talks, but silver point is a very ancient form of drawing, and it predates graphite. So it's a really wonderful technique, but you can't remove it once you draw with it. So you have to be very deliberate in your mark making. This is going back to the tree theme. A lot of our works deal with the tree of life, of course, so this is a part of that same series.
And this is the idea of as above, so below. It's
the reflection of the alphabet you can see on the bottom. It may not be very clear, but it's there. Detail. And then again, the photo.
Corresponding photograph, yeah.
Okay, so I'll quickly go through these because it looks like we're coming to the end of our lecture here. This banyan tree is a really old banyan tree, historical one in Florida. Thomas Edison actually brought the banyan trees from India to Florida. And even though they're seen as invasive species, we find them very beautiful. And people gather at these trees and really enjoy them. So this particular photo is in the exhibition, and that led to the video called Tree Rain. And Tree Rain has a poem that runs through on a loop. You want to explain?
Yeah, it's based on a work of Glaciologia by Andrei Bialy, and it's he exploring every sound, every letter, every sound. And this particular one we based on M sound, which is a very moist sound.
We basically took reflective letters and cut them out of vinyl and found a material that would float and took, fishing line and created a
To
spiral.
hold that
You can't see
all
it there,
together.
but
So
there's
it's
fishing line that
actual
holds
letters
it.
floating in space. And then the next one, we did the same thing in a different environment, and this one is saying
Seen reveals a seer.
right. And then the next one, also from same type of letters, taking in the water
Let go.
at the dawn time, and it's 9th century, I think, right?
Second century
Second
Buddhist
century
poet.
Buddhist poet, and this one is another one. And okay, let's move to
The Tree of Life series. Sorry.
right.
It's just getting close to the end.
I know.
This is the Tree of Life based on Gustav Klimt. Of course, we created our own configuration of the tree, which you see here in the exhibition. Each panel is with egg tempera, and there are a number of different poems from some of our favorite poets based on angelic themes. So you've got Blake, William Blake, Jote, and many others.
So, and also the idea behind this work, that tree can grow, so it could extend itself. So if we wanted to paint more figures, we can extend the painting, and it will be still in the same aesthetic, and it will be growing.
Now this is what it was inspired by, is Klimt's Palais Statues from 1905 to 1911. You can see it, there's similarities, but we did make a lot of our own changes.
Of course, he based his tree on something else. It's not just his own invention of that.
This
tree.
came from the 12th century Rome.
It's
And then this is another one. And it also comes from Russia. This is ancient bronze from Russia, the Scythian deer that you see oftentimes in Russia, in the Ural Mountains where Pasha's from. So we're looking at all these things from art history, whether it be ancient or contemporary. And this is a book that was published on Gustav Klimt that has 10 different artists whose work is inspired by him.
So the theme of Tree of Life, we're exploring many different ways. For example, this one is arriving from China.
And that led to this painting. So we'll show you a couple more slides and then take some questions.
Again,
the talking
this
tree.
similar tree, talking tree, and we came back to the idea of dreamer and the dream. And in this case, obviously boy having dream about talking animals inside of the tree, and the entire text of the dream is represented in a painting.
And this is our series, Language of the Birds, and that's like the most recent series. And in this series, we use the gemstones to represent a sort of mystical link between the animal and the child.
And of course, the white animal in any culture or many different cultures represents something sacred animal.
Now, the language of the birds is like the Tree of Life found in world cultures, and even in like St. Francis of Assisi, that if one has some kind of communication with animals, it's sort of like a higher power. And we use the gems in that work, so the child and the bird have them to represent that communication. This is a silver point drawing, a study for the same theme, and also we once again use crystals and gems in the drawing. Another Language of the Bird series.
Similar in theme painting. And then we start to look into medieval tapestry simply because we are attracted to the aesthetic of that. And then, of course, symbolism too. And then we produce this particular painting, which is based on unicorn tapestry.
However, in this case, she comes out of the enclosure confinement. Okay, detail and the drawing. We always do drawings for our paintings. And the white deer, of course, is symbolic, similar to the peacock.
It's one of the references we found. But what is remarkable about this museum, we came here, and all of a sudden we see the painting which we based this painting on.
Well, actually, the lithograph, the Audubon lithograph, is what we used for anatomical reference for this painting. But we didn't know, because it's such a rare painting, that the one in your museum is actually the son of the same deer. So that was really great for us to see that in person.
Yeah.
And this Honorina and Silver Shod is based on a fairy tale that's common in many different cultures. And once again, we're looking at commonalities of different fairy tale and folklore, and the concept of Silver Shod in Russia and in German fairy tales, that Silver Shod he would spark gems when his hoofs would hit the ground. And only the ones who could understand this mythical animal would be revealed the gems. So she holds a gem, and Silver Shod has it in his antlers. Now we're going to show you the process, and we'll wrap up the lecture.
For example, one of the influences, references we can start the painting based on. And
yeah, this is the inspiration. It started the process. We both saw the painting and said, wow, that would be a great idea for a piece. We like the idea of the nest, the feeling of the womb, and we came up with the maquette. That's how we start.
So what we do, of course, we do a lot of photographs, and then we scan that, technically scan that into computer, and then we start to figuring out how and when, where will be figure placed it. And that scheme, what you see.
Want to go back?
Yeah. What you see we placing on the painting, it's corresponding to this scheme. And then, as you see, number 6, it says musical scale of composition. So that is really corresponding to the musical scale. So in that way, we applying the science of, I would say, numerology in a way.
It also goes back to Renaissance on how to create a harmonious composition. The circling of the square and dividing up the rectangle, the armature of the rectangle.
Every point where those lines meet, we're trying to place the point of the most interest of the painting. So we really planning our work ahead before we even start to paint. And then after it's been approved by both of us, and then we trace into the board and do the traditional way, starting from maybe come back.
You want to go back?
Yeah, go back. So we're starting with the silver point drawing, as here, and this is almost the beginning of the drawing. We render even further, and then we start the first initial very messy, and then we start to refine ourselves.
But that's something I want to say about icon painting. I want to interject. In icon painting, you start with the earth colors because we come from the earth, and only as you refine yourself and your through meditation and contemplation, then you can go to the more pure colors. So you don't just deliberately start with pure colors from the tube. You have to refine yourself.
You have to be ready. You have
stage.
to prepare yourself for that stage.
So we go through the more rough, earthy colors, and then we gradually become brighter.
So this particular piece we almost finished, and then we said to ourselves, the pose which was previously done with hands out doesn't really work. So we send it down, just that part, and repaint completely from scratch that position of arms. And in this case, we think it's representing the idea better than just being a little bit too obvious references of the Christ. So it's, I think in this case, in hand he holding the crane, and on the background you have hanging bird, which is also a very big symbol. Birds.
The crane, it's a symbol in Asia for
and
for
crane,
good luck.
of course, origami is a symbol in. And then we did this painting.
This is one of the most recent, called Night. Vision Night.
Yeah.
And everything is in tempera except the fabric is in oil because of the transparent nature. Okay, now we're going to show you the process. These are our pigments in our studio. First you break the egg. It's like cooking. Then you separate. It's fun. Then you separate the egg yolk from the egg white. Then you put it into a jar.
We usually put vinegar, which is
it's like a preservative.
And in some cultures, like Germany, they put like Riesling wine, and in Russia they put beers doing the
Vodka,
same.
not beer. You use vodka.
Well, vodka was introduced to Russia in 17th century, so it's
Okay,
not
you're right,
it's
you're
not
right.
Russian. It's not a national drink.
Okay, so then it preserves it, and it also cuts down the fatty content of the egg yolk. So we mix it up. We add water. Wait,
then-
I think I skipped something. Yeah, we add water, and then we mix it with the paint, and then we have to test it. And the way you test it is you put a little bit of the paint on a piece of glass, and with a razor blade, if it comes up smooth, then you know you have enough egg that's tempered it.
So this is how it's done. So we're having when we paint, we're having in those little sake cups jars. Many as we needed, many different colors, and we just
We can put them in
using
the
them.
refrigerator.
You can put them in the refrigerator, and they last about at least a week. And also about the gold leaf process, it's also taking the idea of from the
Icon.
icon writing, and it's specially prepared clay. You just breathe on that clay, which is, and then you adhere the gold leaf, which is really symbolized the breath of life. So you're giving the life into the painting. So